The royal alien princess faced death. Even a human warrior gave everything to protect her. The morning sun of Kepler 440b cast strange purple shadows across the rocky landscape. When Marcus Chen heard the explosion, he dropped his geological scanner and looked up at the sky, watching black smoke trail from something falling fast toward the northern ridge. His withered hand shielded his eyes as he tracked the burning object, until it disappeared behind the crystal formations that dotted this wild planet. Marcus had been alone on Kepler 440b for 8 months, working as a terraforming engineer for the Colonial Development Corporation. The job was simple but dangerous: test soil samples, map mineral deposits, and prepare reports for future colonization. Most people thought he was crazy for taking such an isolated assignment, but Marcus preferred the quiet. After 15 years in Earth's military, he had seen enough of war and politics. This empty world gave him peace, but peace was about to end. He packed his equipment quickly and headed toward the crash site on his hover bike. The terrain was rough, filled with sharp rocks and deep crevices that could swallow a man whole. Strange plants with metallic leaves grew in clusters, their surfaces reflecting the alien sunlight like mirrors. The air was thin but breathable, though humans needed breathing masks during physical activity. 20 minutes later, Marcus reached the crash site. What he found made him stop and stare in disbelief. The wreckage was clearly not human technology. The ship's hull was made of some kind of living crystal that still pulsed with faint blue light. Even though the vessel was completely destroyed, debris scattered across a 100-meter area, some pieces still smoking. But what caught his attention was not the ship, it was the figure sitting against a large piece of wreckage. She was definitely not human. The alien woman was tall and graceful, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow from within. Her hair was white as snow and moved gently even though there was no wind. She wore elegant robes that looked expensive, decorated with symbols Marcus did not recognize. Most striking were her eyes, large and silver, like liquid mercury, and currently filled with pain and fear. She was injured. A piece of metal had cut her arm, and strange golden blood seeped through her fingers as she pressed against the wound. When she saw Marcus approaching, she straightened up and tried to look dignified despite her situation. "Stay back, primitive creature," she said in perfect English, though her voice had a musical quality that made even her insult sound beautiful. "I am Princess Zerathel of the Velter Empire. You will not harm me." Marcus stopped about 10 feet away and raised his hands to show he meant no harm. He had heard of the Velter. They were one of the oldest and most powerful alien civilizations in the galaxy. They considered themselves superior to most other species, especially humans, who had only reached space travel in the last century. "I'm not going to hurt you," Marcus said calmly. "My name is Marcus Chen. I'm a terraforming engineer. You're injured and your ship is destroyed. Let me help you." Princess Zerathel laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Help? From a human? Your species barely knows how to leave your own solar system. What help could you possibly offer?" Despite her harsh words, Marcus could see she was in serious trouble. He looked around the crash site and noticed something that made his blood run cold. There were no other survivors visible, but he could see the remains of what looked like guards, tall figures in crystalline armor, now broken and lifeless. "Where are your people?" he asked. Her silver eyes flickered with something that might have been sadness. "Gone. All of them. My guards, my pilots, my advisors, all dead." She paused, then added with bitter pride, "They died protecting me, as was their duty." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the alien sun. This wasn't an accident, was it? Princess Zerathel studied him for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether to trust him with the truth. Finally, she spoke. "No. My ship was sabotaged. There are those in my government who do not approve of my progressive ideas about including younger species in galactic politics. They prefer permanent solutions to political problems. Someone tried to kill you," Marcus said quietly, "and they nearly succeeded." She winced as she moved, and Marcus noticed her breathing was becoming labored. "But assassins are thorough. They will have sent ground forces to ensure their work. is completed, as if her words had summoned them. Marcus heard the distant sound of aircraft engines approaching from the south. He grabbed his binoculars and looked toward the sound. 3 dark shapes moved across the sky, clearly military vehicles, and they were heading straight for the crash site. Friends of yours? Marcus asked. Though he already knew the answer, Princess Zerathel struggled to stand, using the wreckage. For support, mercenaries. Very expensive ones, if I know my enemies. She looked at Marcus with those strange silver eyes. You should leave now, human. Run far from this place. When they arrive, they will eliminate any witnesses. Marcus lowered his binoculars and looked at the injured alien princess. She was proud, arrogant, and had insulted his entire species within minutes of meeting him. By all logical reasoning, he should take her advice and run. He had his own life to think about, his own problems to solve. Instead, he found himself walking toward her. Can you travel? He asked. She blinked in surprise. What? Can you walk, run if necessary? Because those aircraft will be here in about 15 minutes. And this crash site will be the first place they look. Yes, I believe so. But why would you? She trailed off, staring at him with confusion. Marcus was already moving, gathering useful pieces of equipment from the wreckage. He found what looked like a breathing device and handed it to her. You'll need this. The air gets thinner in the highlands, and you're already having trouble breathing. Human. You do not understand. These are professional killers. They will not hesitate to eliminate you simply for being here. Marcus paused in his search and looked directly at her. My name is Marcus, and yes, I understand exactly what kind of people they are. I've dealt with their type before. He moved his hoverbike and made a decision that surprised even himself. Pulling out his emergency beacon, his only guaranteed way to call for rescue. From this isolated planet, he smashed it against a rock. The device sparked and died. Princess. Zerathel stared at the broken beacon in shock. What have you done? That was your way home. Marcus shouldered his pack and started walking toward the rocky hills to the north. Now they can't track us using the beacon's signal. Come on, Your Highness, time to disappear. She stood frozen for a moment, watching the strange human who had just destroyed his own escape route to protect someone he barely knew. The sound of approaching aircraft grew louder. Finally, Princess Zerathel of the Velter Empire followed, the human into the wilderness, beginning a journey that would change both their lives forever. The rocky hills of Kepler 4 were to be stretched endlessly before them, as Marcus led Princess Zerathel away from the crash site. Behind them, the sound of aircraft grew louder until it became a threatening roar that echoed off the canyon walls. Marcus kept moving forward, his experienced eyes scanning the terrain for the best path to take. Princess Zerathel struggled to keep up. Her elegant robes were not designed for hiking through rough wilderness, and her injury made every step painful. The breathing device Marcus had given her helped, but she was clearly not used to this kind of physical activity. How much further? She asked, trying to hide the exhaustion in her voice. Marcus glanced back at her, noting how pale her blue skin had become. There's a cave system about 2 miles north. We could rest there and figure out our next move. 2 miles. She stopped, walking, and stared at him. I cannot possibly travel that distance in my condition. You can and you will, Marcus said firmly but not unkindly, because the alternative is being found by those mercenaries. And I don't think either of us wants that. As if to prove his point, the sound of the aircraft suddenly stopped. They had landed at the crash site. Princess Zerathel, silver eyes widened with fear, but she began walking again without another complaint. Marcus was impressed despite himself. For all her royal attitude, she had courage when it mattered. They moved as quickly as they could. Through the alien landscape, the purple sun climbed higher in the sky, making the metallic plants gleam like jewels. Strange bird-like creatures with crystal wings flew overhead, their calls sounding like wind chimes in the breeze. After an hour of walking, Marcus heard something that made his blood freeze, the low hum of hoverbikes in the distance. The mercenaries had found their trail and were following them. They're coming, he said quietly. Princess Zerathel looked back toward the sound with terror in her eyes. How did they find us so quickly? Marcus studied the ground around them and cursed under his breath. The princess's golden blood had been dripping from her wound, leaving a trail that even a child could follow. But he didn't want to make her feel worse about their situation. They're professionals. He said instead, but so am I. He led her off the main path toward a cluster of tall crystal formations. The structures were natural, formed over thousands of years by the planet's unique geology. They created a maze-like area perfect for hiding and confusing pursuers. Stay close to me, Marcus whispered as they entered the crystal maze. Step exactly where I step. Don't touch anything unless I touch it first. They moved carefully through the formations, with Marcus choosing their path based on knowledge he had gained. During his months on the planet, he knew which crystals were stable and which ones would break under pressure. He knew which paths led to dead ends and which ones opened into larger areas. The sound of hoverbikes grew louder. Marcus could hear at least 3 different engines, which meant they were outnumbered. But being outnumbered was nothing new for him. During his military service, he had learned that smaller forces could defeat larger ones with the right tactics and terrain. This way, he whispered, leading Princess Zerathel down a narrow passage between 2 huge crystal walls. They emerged into a small clearing surrounded by formations that rose up like frozen waterfalls. Marcus quickly scanned the area and spotted what he was looking for, a pile of debris from an old mining operation that had been abandoned years ago. Help me with this, he said, moving toward the debris pile. What are you doing? Princess Zerathel asked, but she helped him anyway. Marcus pulled out pieces of metal, old cables, and broken equipment. His engineering mind was already working, seeing possibilities that others might miss. Making sure we don't get caught. Working quickly, he connected cables to pieces of metal and arranged them in a specific pattern around the clearing. Princess Zerathel watched in fascination as he created what looked like a complex trap, using nothing but junk. Your species is strange, she said quietly. Most civilized beings would surrender when faced with impossible odds. Marcus looked up from his work. Most civilized beings don't know what it's like to fight for survival every day. Humans learned a long time ago that giving up is the only sure way to lose. The sound of hoverbikes was very close now. Marcus could hear voices calling to each other in a language he didn't recognize. But their tone was clear enough. They were hunting. Get behind that large crystal. Marcus told the princess, no matter what happens, stay hidden until I tell. You it's safe. Princess Zerathel grabbed his arm. What about you? I'm going to give them something to think about. She stared at him with those silver eyes. And for the first time since they had met, her expression held no arrogance or superiority. Why are you doing this? You could have run when you first saw the crash. You could have left me there and saved yourself. Why risk your life for someone you barely know? Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking about her question. Finally, he said, because it's the right thing to do, and because maybe your progressive ideas about including humans in galactic politics aren't so crazy after all. Someone has to prove we're worth including. Before she could respond, the first hoverbike appeared at the entrance to the clearing. The rider was tall and wore dark armor that covered his entire body. His face was hidden behind a helmet, but Marcus could feel hostile eyes studying the area. Marcus crouched behind his makeshift trap and waited. He had learned patience during his military service, and patience was often the difference between life and death in situations like this. The mercenary rode slowly into the clearing, clearly suspicious of the quiet. 2 more riders followed him, spreading out to cover different angles. They were professionals, just as Marcus had expected. The lead mercenary said something in his alien language and pointed toward the crystal, where Princess Zerathel was hiding. They had found her trail. That was when Marcus triggered his trap. The connected cables suddenly came alive with electrical current, creating a web of sparks that confused the hoverbike's navigation systems. 2 of the vehicles crashed into crystal formations, their riders thrown clear. The third bike spun out of control and smashed into the debris pile. Marcus was already moving before the dust settled. He reached the first stunned mercenary and grabbed the alien's weapon, some kind of energy rifle that hummed with power. The mercenary tried to fight back, but Marcus had trained for close combat against opponents who were bigger and stronger than humans. Speed and intelligence defeated size and strength. The other two mercenaries were getting back on their feet, reaching for their own weapons. Marcus knew he had only seconds before they recovered completely. This way, he shouted to Princess Zerathel. She emerged from her hiding place and ran toward him. Marcus grabbed her hand and led her toward a narrow passage he had spotted earlier. Behind them, angry voices shouted and energy weapons began firing as they disappeared into the crystal maze. Princess Zerathel looked back at the human who had just saved her life again. She was beginning to understand that everything her people believed about humans might be completely wrong. The narrow passage led Marcus and Princess Zerathel deeper into the crystal formations than either of them had expected. What had started as a simple escape route became a winding tunnel that sloped steadily downward. The walls around them glowed with a soft blue light that came from within the crystal itself, creating an otherworldly atmosphere that reminded the princess of her homeworld. "Where are we going?" Princess Zerathel asked as they moved through the tunnel. Her breathing was becoming more labored, and Marcus noticed she was leaning heavily against the wall for support. "I'm not sure," Marcus admitted. "I've never been this deep in the formation before. But it's better than being up there with those mercenaries behind them." They could still hear distant voices and the occasional sound of energy weapons firing. The mercenaries were searching for them, but the crystal maze was large and confusing. Marcus hoped it would buy them enough time to find a safe place to rest. The tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber that took both their breaths away. The ceiling rose high above them, supported by natural crystal pillars that sparkled like diamonds. In the center of the chamber was a pool of clear water that reflected the crystal light. Like a mirror, along the walls, Marcus could see carved symbols and designs that were clearly artificial. "This is impossible," Princess Zerathel whispered, staring at the symbols. "These are Velter markings, ancient ones." Marcus helped her sit down beside the pool of water. "Your people were here before? Thousands of years ago, during our first expansion period." She traced one of the symbols with her finger, her silver eyes wide with wonder. "This chamber was a research station. My ancestors studied this planet long before humans even knew other worlds existed." While she examined the ancient markings, Marcus checked their situation. His own breathing device was running low on power, and he could see that the princess's condition was getting worse. The stress of their escape, combined with her injury and the thin air, was taking its toll on both of them. "We need to rest here for a while," he said, sitting down across from her. "Those mercenaries will have a hard time finding us in this chamber." Princess Zerathel nodded gratefully and leaned back against the crystal wall. For several minutes, they sat in comfortable silence, listening to the gentle sound of water dripping somewhere in the darkness. "Marcus," she said finally, her voice softer than he had heard before. "May I ask you something personal?" "Sure. Why did you come to this isolated planet? Humans are social creatures, are they not? Why choose to be alone?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring at the reflection of crystal light on the water. "I used to be a military engineer on Earth. I fought in the border wars against the Terran colonies." Princess Zerathel had heard of these conflicts. They were small wars by galactic standards, but significant for humanity. "You were a soldier. For 15 years. I designed defensive systems, built fortifications, created weapons." His voice grew heavy with old pain. "I was good at it. Too good, maybe. What happened?" Marcus picked up a small piece of crystal and turned it over in his hands. "There was a battle on Kepler 186f. The colonists had built a city there, with families and children. My defensive systems were supposed to protect them." He paused, struggling with the memory. "The systems failed, not because of bad design, but because I had trusted the wrong people with the access codes. Politicians who thought they knew better than engineers. The city fell, completely. 20,000 people died, including children, because I made one mistake in judgment about who to trust." He looked up at her with pain in his eyes. "After that, I couldn't stand being around people who played politics with other people's lives. So I came here, where the only life I could mess up was my own. Princess Zerathel studied his face in the crystal light, and yet, when you found me, you immediately chose to risk your life to save mine, even though you knew it could cost you everything. That's different. How? Marcus thought about it, because this time, I'm choosing to help someone who actually wants to make things better. You said you have progressive ideas about including younger species in galactic politics. That tells me you're not like the politicians I used to work with. The princess smiled sadly. You might be surprised. Politics is politics. Whether on Earth or in the Velter Empire. I have enemies because I believe humans and other young species deserve a voice. In galactic affairs, many of my people think such ideas are dangerous enough to kill you for them, obviously. She gestured toward the tunnel they had come through. My cousin, Prince Ketharan, leads the traditional faction. He believes the old ways are best, that ancient species like the Velter should guide younger ones without giving them real power. My ideas threaten his vision of how the galaxy should work. Marcus felt a chill of understanding. So he arranged for your ship to be sabotaged. I cannot prove it, but yes. He hired mercenaries to make it look like an accident during my diplomatic mission to the neutral worlds. Her voice grew bitter. If I die here, he becomes next in line for the throne. Very convenient. What was your diplomatic mission about? Princess Zerathel looked directly at him. I was trying to build support for a proposal to give humanity a full seat on the Galactic Council. Currently, your species has only observer status. Marcus stared at her in shock. You were trying to help humans? Yes. Your people have shown remarkable growth in just 1 century of space travel. You have qualities that older species have forgotten: creativity, determination, the willingness to sacrifice for others. She paused meaningfully. Qualities you have demonstrated perfectly today. The sound of voices echoed from somewhere in the tunnel system above them. The mercenaries were still searching, and they were getting closer. Marcus stood up and began examining the ancient Velter equipment scattered around the chamber. Is any of this stuff still working? Princess Zerathel joined him, moving slowly. But with purpose, possibly. Velter technology is built to last for thousands of years. She approached what looked like a control panel carved into the crystal wall. This appears to be a communication system. Can you activate it? I can try, but it will require a great deal of power. She looked at him seriously. Power that would have to come from our breathing devices. Marcus understood immediately. Using their life support systems to power the communication array would leave them with very little air. In the thin atmosphere of the underground chamber, that could be a death sentence. How long would the signal last? He asked. Long enough to reach the nearest Velter patrol ship. If there's one in this system. The voices were getting louder. Marcus could hear the sound of boots on stone echoing through the tunnels. The mercenaries had found the entrance to the underground chamber. Do it, Marcus said without hesitation. Princess Zerathel stared at him. You could die. We'll both die if those mercenaries find us, at least this way. You have a chance to survive and continue your work for galactic peace. She began connecting cables between her breathing device and the ancient control panel. You would sacrifice your life for political ideals you might not even agree with. Marcus helped her make the connections. His engineering experience useful even with alien technology. I'm not doing this for politics. I'm doing it because I believe in you. The sound of approaching footsteps grew louder. Princess Zerathel activated the communication array, and the ancient Velter technology came to life with a soft humming sound. Their breathing devices began to power down. In the distance, Marcus could see lights moving through the tunnels. The mercenaries had found them at last. The ancient Velter communication array hummed with power as it drained energy from their breathing devices. Marcus watched the power levels drop on his equipment display, knowing that each passing second brought them closer to suffocation. But the signal was transmitting, sending Princess Zerathel distress call across the star system to any Velter ships that might be listening. How long until the signal reaches them? Marcus asked, keeping his voice calm despite their desperate situation. Princess Zerathel worked frantically at the control panel. her fingers dancing over symbols that glow with soft blue light. If there is a patrol ship in this system, perhaps 2 hours for the message to reach them and another hour for them to arrive here. Marcus did quick calculations in his head. With their breathing devices powering the communication array, they had maybe 30 minutes of air left. The math was simple and terrifying. The sound of approaching mercenaries grew louder. Marcus could see the glow of their portable lights, reflecting off the crystal walls of the tunnel that led to their chamber. They had perhaps 5 minutes before the killers found them. "Princess," Marcus said quietly, "I need you to do something for me." She looked up from the control panel, her silver eyes wide with concern. "What is it?" "When those mercenaries come through that tunnel, I want you to hide behind the largest crystal pillar. No matter what happens, stay hidden until help arrives. You cannot face them alone. There are at least 3 of them, possibly more." Marcus was already moving around the chamber, gathering pieces of ancient Velter equipment and broken crystal fragments. His engineering mind worked quickly, seeing possibilities in the debris that others might miss. "I'm not planning to face them in open combat. I'm going to make them think twice about coming after us." Working with desperate speed, Marcus began setting up defensive positions around the chamber. He used pieces of broken crystal to create sharp barriers that would channel the mercenaries into specific areas. Ancient Velter tools became improvised weapons in his skilled hands. Cables and power cells from old equipment were rigged into simple but effective traps. Princess Zerathel watched in amazement as the human transformed their refuge into a fortress using nothing but ruins and determination. "Where did you learn to do this?" 15 years of military engineering, Marcus replied, connecting a power cell to a crystal formation in a way that would create a bright flash when activated, plus 8 months of studying this planet's unique properties. The first mercenary appeared at the tunnel entrance just as Marcus finished his preparations. The killer was tall and heavily armed, wearing the kind of advanced armor that could stop most weapons. Behind him, Marcus could see at least 2 more figures waiting in the shadows. Princess Zerathel of the Velter Empire, the lead mercenary, called out in accented English. "You will come with us now. Your death will be quick and painless if you surrender." "She's not going anywhere," Marcus replied, positioning himself between the mercenaries and the crystal pillar where the princess was hiding. The mercenary laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the chamber. "One human against professional soldiers. You are either very brave or very stupid." "Probably both," Marcus admitted. "But I'm also very stubborn." The mercenary raised his energy rifle and fired. Marcus was already moving, diving behind a crystal barrier as the energy blast shattered the stone where he had been standing. The battle for their lives had begun. Marcus triggered his first trap. As the mercenaries advanced into the chamber, the modified power cell exploded in a brilliant flash of light that temporarily blinded the attackers, while they stumbled in confusion. Marcus moved to his second position and activated another improvised weapon. Sharp crystal fragments, launched by a spring mechanism he had built from ancient Velter tools, scattered across the chamber floor. The mercenaries' armor protected them from serious injury, but the unexpected attack forced them to move more carefully. "Clever human," the lead mercenary called out, "but tricks will only delay the inevitable." Marcus knew he was right. His improvised defenses could slow the mercenaries down, but they couldn't stop them permanently. He had maybe 10 minutes of air left in his breathing device, and the professional killers had all the time in the world. But 10 minutes might be enough. The second mercenary tried to circle around to flank Marcus's position. The human was ready for this move, triggering a cable trap that sent the attacker stumbling into a pit filled with sharp crystal spikes. The mercenary's armor saved his life, but he was temporarily out of the fight. The third mercenary opened fire with an automatic energy weapon, filling the chamber with deadly beams of light. Marcus rolled between crystal pillars, using the ancient formations as cover while he worked his way toward his final prepared position. His breathing was becoming labored now. The thin air of the underground chamber, combined with the physical stress of combat, was taking its toll. But he couldn't give up, not while Princess Zerathel was depending on him. The lead mercenary was advancing steadily, his rifle trained on Marcus's hiding spot. "You fight well for a primitive species," he called out. "But this ends now." Marcus smiled grimly and activated his last trap, the ancient Velter communication array. Still powered by their breathing devices, suddenly overloaded. The energy feedback created a massive electromagnetic pulse that disabled the mercenaries' electronic equipment. Their armor systems failed, their weapons stopped working, and their helmet displays went dark. In the sudden confusion, Marcus made his move. He launched himself from behind the crystal pillar, tackling the lead mercenary and sending them both crashing to the chamber floor. Without his powered armor, the alien was stronger than Marcus, but the human had desperation on his side. They fought hand to hand among the crystal formations, neither willing to give up. Marcus used every dirty trick he had learned in 15 years of military service. While the mercenary relied on superior strength and training, the battle was brutal and desperate. The other two mercenaries were recovering from the electromagnetic pulse, reaching for backup weapons. Marcus knew he was running out of time. His vision was starting to blur from lack of oxygen, and his movements were becoming slower. That was when he heard the most beautiful sound in the galaxy, the deep hum of Velter starship engines approaching. From above, the rescue ships had received the princess's signal. The lead mercenary heard the engines too and knew the mission had failed. He pushed Marcus away and ran toward the tunnel, calling for his companions to retreat. Within minutes, the chamber was empty except for Marcus and Princess Zerathel. Marcus collapsed beside the crystal pool, his breathing shallow and rapid. The princess emerged from her hiding place and knelt beside him, her own face pale from oxygen deprivation. "The ships are coming," she whispered. "We made it." Marcus looked up at her and smiled weakly. "Your progressive ideas about humans still think they're worth fighting for?" Princess Zerathel took his hand in hers, her silver eyes filled with tears. "More than ever. You have shown me something about your species that I will never forget." Above them, the sound of Velter rescue ships grew louder as help finally arrived. But Marcus Chen had already proven everything that needed proving about the courage and determination of humanity. 3 months after the rescue from Kepler 440b, Princess Zerathel stood before the greatest assembly in galactic history. Representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the massive hall of the Galactic Council, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes that stretched as far as the eye could see. But despite the grandeur of the moment, her thoughts kept returning to a simple human engineer who had changed everything. The rescue ships had arrived just in time to save both their lives. But Marcus had spent 2 weeks in medical treatment, recovering from oxygen deprivation and his injuries from the fight with the mercenaries. During those long days in the hospital, Princess Zerathel had stayed by his side, learning more about humanity through her conversations with the doctors and nurses who cared for him. "Your Highness," the council speaker announced, his voice echoing through the vast hall. "You may present your proposal." Princess Zerathel stepped forward to the central podium, her elegant robes shimmering under the lights of 1,000 different suns. Round her, the representatives waited in silence. Some looked curious, others skeptical, and a few openly hostile. She had expected this reaction. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice clear and strong. "I come before you today not just as princess of the Velter Empire, but as someone whose life was saved by a member of a species many of you consider primitive and unworthy of our attention." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The Velter were known for their pride and their belief in their own superiority. For their princess to admit being saved by a human was shocking. "Too many, 3 months ago, assassins tried to end my life because I believe that younger species, particularly humanity, deserve full representation in this council. They sabotaged my ship and hunted me across the surface of Kepler 440b, with the intention of silencing my voice forever." She paused, looking out at the sea of alien faces. They would have succeeded, if not for the actions of one human named Marcus Chen, in the special viewing gallery reserved for honored guests. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He had not wanted to attend this ceremony, preferring the quiet of his work. But Princess Zerathel had insisted. Beside him sat several Earth ambassadors who watched the proceedings with barely contained excitement. Marcus Chen was a terraforming engineer working alone on that distant world. The princess continued, "He had no reason to help me. My people have treated his species with condescension for decades. He could have walked away and saved himself. Instead, he chose to risk everything to protect someone he had just met." She activated a holographic display that showed images from Kepler 440b, the crash site, the crystal formations, and the underground chamber where they had made their final stand. This human destroyed his own rescue beacon to prevent my enemies from tracking us. He led me through hostile terrain despite his own safety. He used his engineering skills to create weapons and defenses from ancient ruins and debris. And when we were cornered in that underground chamber with no hope of escape, he chose to use his life support system to power a distress signal, knowing it might kill him. The hall was completely silent now. Even the most skeptical representatives were listening intently. But most importantly, Princess Zerathel said, her voice growing stronger, "He showed me something about his species that we have all overlooked. Humans do not just fight for survival. They fight for ideals. They sacrifice for strangers. They refuse to give up even when facing impossible odds." She turned to look directly at the section where the Earth delegation sat. "During our time together, Marcus told me about his past. He was a military engineer who left his career because he could not bear the politics. That cost innocent lives. He came to that isolated planet to escape the very kind of corruption and scheming that led to the attempt on my life. Yet when faced with a choice between his own safety and doing what was right, he never hesitated." An elderly representative from the Zephyrian Collective stood up. "Your Highness, while this human's actions were admirable, they represent the behavior of one individual. How can you ask us to judge an entire species based on one person's choices?" Princess Zerathel smiled, "Because Marcus Chen is not unique among his people. During my recovery, I studied human history and spoke with many members of their species. Again and again, I found the same pattern: humans who sacrifice for others, who refuse to surrender in the face of overwhelming odds, who choose to do what is right even when it costs them everything." She activated another holographic display, showing scenes from human history, rescue workers saving lives in disasters, scientists working to cure diseases, explorers pushing into the unknown to expand knowledge for all humanity. Their species has existed in space for barely a century, yet they have already shown qualities that many older civilizations have forgotten. They innovate under pressure. They adapt to impossible situations. They form bonds across species barriers that our diplomats take decades to build. A representative from the ancient crystalline hegemony spoke up. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Princess, I am proposing that humanity be granted full membership status in the Galactic Council, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Furthermore, I am establishing the Marcus Chen Foundation for Interspecies Cooperation, dedicated to promoting understanding and partnership between all species in our galaxy." The announcement created an explosion of discussion throughout the hall. Some representatives argued loudly against the proposal, while others debated its merits. Princess Zerathel waited patiently for the noise to die down. "I know this proposal challenges many of our traditional beliefs," she said when the hall quieted. "But tradition without growth leads to stagnation. The galaxy is changing, and we must change with it. Humanity has proven they deserve a voice in our future." The vote that followed was closer than anyone had expected, but the proposal passed. For the first time in galactic history, a species less than 1,000 years old was granted full council membership based not on military power or technological advancement, but on the demonstrated character of its people. Later that evening, Princess Zerathel found Marcus standing alone on the observation deck of the council station, looking out at the stars. He had avoided the celebration, preferring the quiet of space. "You know this is all your fault," she said, joining him at the viewing window. Marcus smiled. "I was just doing what anyone would do." "No," she said firmly, "you were doing what a human would do, and that has made all the difference. Together, They watched the stars twinkle in the darkness, knowing that somewhere among those distant suns, the galaxy was becoming a better place because one person had chosen to do what was right, regardless of the cost. The Marcus Chen Foundation would go on to establish cooperation programs on hundreds of worlds. The memorial built on Kepler 440b became a pilgrimage site where beings from across the galaxy came to learn about the human who had changed galactic politics forever. But perhaps the most important legacy was the simple truth that Marcus had proven that courage, compassion, and determination were not the exclusive property of any one species, but qualities that could inspire the entire galaxy toward a better future. Princess Zarathel, who would become Empress within the year, never forgot the lesson she learned in that underground chamber. Sometimes, the most important changes in history begin with one person's choice to help a stranger, regardless of the consequences, and in the quiet moments of state functions and diplomatic ceremonies. She would often think of a simple human engineer who had taught an alien princess that the greatest strength in the galaxy was not technology or military power, but the willingness to sacrifice for others. The stars continued to shine, witnesses to a friendship that had changed the course of galactic civilization forever.